Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pass the Aux Cord, and welcome back to Album of the Day, this one being our third installment so far. Today we are going to be taking a look at a very fun album, 1-800-PAIN's Their Money Is Your Money. 1-800-PAIN is an experimental hip-hop and power noise duo coming from Detroit, consisting of MC Jody Jetski and producer Joan DeBonetchis, I think. They've made somewhat of a name for themselves in the last few years through their very online aesthetics and extremely harsh and abrasive hip-hop music. Their intense visuals as well, and their ability to mesh together certain sounds and styles that you wouldn't necessarily be expecting. Their Money Is Your Money is their second album, seemingly with more on the way. But it feels like their first real attempt at making a full-length album, with it being several more minutes long than the debut Best House on a Bad Block. That one was a very trim 7 songs and 22 minutes. This time around they're coming in with 7 more minutes overall, as well as 4 more tracks. And Their Money Is Your Money is showing the full potential of what this duo can produce. As someone who's a fan of very abrasive and experimental music, 1-800-PAIN's aesthetic and songs in and of themselves are something that immediately really appealed to me upon first listen, because it's about as harsh and experimental as it gets. 1-800-PAIN makes something like 100 gecs or JPEG Mafia look like radio-friendly pop music in comparison. The hoes have never been this startled. The only real point of comparison that I could possibly make that relates in any kind of way is Cemetery's Rainbow Bridge 3, and I just realized I'm wearing the other Haunted Mound shirt here, so representing. Obviously I love that record as well, but that's the closest thing I can think of to it without actually diving into the harsh noise genre. And if you can manage to be one step away from Pulse Demon and still catchy, I think that's quite impressive. To actually describe what's happening sonically on this album is a little bit tricky because of how heavily distorted, staticky, and raw every element of the music is. One Album of the Year user described it as music, but you've poked holes in your eardrums with a screwdriver. And as this is a fair assessment, I don't think it really does the whole thing justice. The actual structure of the beats themselves are heavily influenced by a lot of different kinds of dance and electronic music. House most notably comes to mind, but anything that could be danced to and played at a rave is what it could be compared to. Danceable grooves, 808 beats, things along that line. This ends up being the base in which they build off of, and then worked in is some trap influence, loud glitchy samples, abrasive sound effects, and about 13 metric tons of distortion, and then a cranking of the volume dial all the way up to 11, of course. That is 100% literal, by the way, and this is also part of the comparison to Rainbow Bridge 3. I cannot put this on playlists that I drive to because it is actually louder than everything else on streaming. So if I were to put the playlist on shuffle and it comes up, I would probably swerve into oncoming traffic and kill a family or something.
Those two events being completely unrelated to each other.
There is, of course, the actual vocals and rapping, which may strangely be one of the most familiar elements to many listeners, despite how strange and unconventional they still are. The actual rapping and what you could probably call singing at certain points is somewhat reminiscent of the flows and style of how many rappers would approach very popular music such as trap. There are several interpolations all throughout the project of fairly popular songs, so naturally that brings a catchier aesthetic as well as something a little bit more melodic and familiar to latch onto. Ease and accessibility is not, however, the case for the effects placed on the vocals, as well as the ear-destroying screeches on certain tracks, such as R.I.P. Kevin. It may all be a little bit more at home for frequent listeners of hyperpop, that general genre does have a similar vocal effect where everything's pitched upwards. And while most of it is pitched up, some of it is pitched downwards as well. And the most popular point of comparison I could bring up is someone like Corpse, and it further adds to the overall outlandishness. If you didn't gather, the point seems to be being as extreme as possible, and there's very few people competing. This album opens up on a bit of a little monologue from Jody Jetski. It reads, "New York City, you listen to me. If you're near a convenience store right now, or any type of 24-hour store, go into the store right now and put your hand in the cash register for no reason. Their money is your money as of right now." No matter how long I describe how this album was written, I don't think I could actually describe it any better than that monologue itself, other than the fact that I should mention that it's very terminally online. Only one song in, and we've already heard the Mr. Krabs Play That Song Again meme sample. Most of the songs on here have some sort of interpolation as well, as I did mention before, which definitely gives a little bit of catchiness to everything. We have everything from something like Get Got by Death Grips being interpolated on R.I.P. Kevin to one of the most obvious interpolations occurring on I Might Die, which is coming from Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy. I'll go over more in the track-by-track section, however the selection is certainly eclectic. The main focus of the lyrics seems to be being as criminally insane as possible while making as many pop culture references as possible. We have everything from allusions to Star Wars, to the anime Berserk, to kinky Japanese fetish porn, to Dan Schneider's foot fetish, with the former of those last two being right next to a Luigi's Mansion reference. The actual intention and point seems to be to commit murders, commit lots of crimes, steal things, and be very angry. BNE is a very good example of that criminal mindset, with this song taking up the topic of robbing someone's house and possibly doing even more malicious things than that. Information you found about them on the internet. It's like if Hacker by Death Grips was written by someone 25 years younger than everyone in the band. Sometimes the references do get a little bit too heavy-handed or frequent, to be honest with you, but it does all kind of play into the ridiculous aesthetic of it all. The fact that they even managed to write any lyrics that match the sound in any way is pretty impressive. Kicking off the track list, we have Forbes List, which has a chorus with one of the most memorable pieces of lyricism in the entire album. This isn't anything crazy or mind-blowing lyrically, but I think it's great to have lines like that land on the opening cut, really letting you know what you're in for. Track 3 not only brings us that insane Too Sexy interpolation, which I'm not really sure if I should mention in the lyrics section or in the track-by-track section, but also brings us the triple entendre, she off the cane if she able on the weekend. If we break that down, we've got a few things. First of all, this girl does coke on the weekend, obviously. Second, the reference to the artist The Weeknd, who might be a little bit more obvious. His name is Abel, of course, his actual name, who frequently talks about cocaine in his songs, even has a hit song about it, of course. Third, there's the biblical story of Cain and Abel also being worked into there. The fact that Cain kills Abel in the actual story adds another layer of it too. I don't know if that's really intentional, but it is a fairly violent story, so maybe that's completely warranted. It's such an oddly heady line for a song and album like this. The third verse of iPod Shuffle Mix also needs to be mentioned here. The milkshake interpolation already makes this one of the most fun and ridiculous tracks on the album, but this third verse is packed full of various references. Pussy bald like Rufus is especially really something. R.I.P. Kevin has I just loaded lead in my Zeppelin. I'm about to send you on a stairway to heaven, which is pretty clever. I like that one. Tekimuo has the incredibly hard bar. Shot him in the face for an Xbox 360. In your ex's box, doing tricks, did a 360. So, I mean, that really speaks for itself. I Need It brings us When That Choppa Get in Sync, Make Your Boys Go Bye Bye Bye. Simply incredible. And before I end up just reading off every bar in the whole damn album, I'll just make another mention to BNE, because this song as a whole is just wild sonically and lyrically. The "I'ma tell you what a bird told me" motif is an oddly terrifying repetition. Number 1 is Forbes' List. This song is top tier when it comes to album openers. I already mentioned that it really sets up all you need to know lyrically. It gives us the themes of this album very upfront, but it instantly grabs your attention, especially considering that catchy hook. And the monologue that comes before it, great, excellent way to start things off. The instrumental is also one of the peaks of the album, perfectly utilizing the chaos to make something that's still fun to listen to. It's so glitchy and fast, eventually leading up to that very hard-hitting, extremely minimal and distorted outro. Number 2 is Freak Out. The chorus on this one is also incredible. It does the impossible in hitting us with something that is even heavier and even catchier than Forbes' List. I feel like I can hear how this would sound in a live setting, if that makes sense. When I listen to it loud, it just really hits me in a certain way where I feel like I can picture that would just shake you in a live setting, and I want to start moshing with myself in my bedroom here. It is one of the most fun ones to listen to. It's just pure euphoria. This song is basically drugs. Number 3, I Might Die, is a song that opens up on an incredibly distorted, harsh noise-like intro, and then hits us with a way too sexy interpolation, which I have mentioned a few times already, but that juxtaposition is one of the most funny things ever. There's something about the lyrical changes to this actual hook that I really enjoy. It's not something I can exactly tell you why for sure, but I really like it. And then the sample choice and the lyricism and the flows used in the rest of the song really offset the relative accessibility of that chorus. Track 4 is iPod Shuffle Mix 2009 with underscores between it in all caps. From the Bendaroos commercial sample in the beginning to interpolations of both Milkshake and Holla Back Girl, I really feel like this is some sort of 2000s kid nostalgia rush. It's a straight up nostalgia compilation in one of the most unexpected places. That sample in the beginning, the Bendaroos one, made me go back and watch that commercial, and I unlocked memories that I didn't even realize I had. This is a murder rap, deep fried and bass boosted version of my childhood, and I could not respect that more. I'm a little bit conflicted on R.I.P. Kevin, to be honest with you. It might end up being my least favorite, and I'm pretty unsuspecting place. It does interpolate Get Got by Death Grips, which is easily my favorite thing interpolated on the entire project. That is coming off of one of my favorite albums of all time, The Money Store, of course. However, I don't think it's one of the more creative interpolations. What they do with it just doesn't really impress me. I more like that it's there than like what they do with it. I'm also not sure how to feel about the section of lyrics that the title actually comes from. It seems a little random for the sake of random, although that is kind of a common thing on here, and it's something that's bound to pop up. Aside from that, though, I am impressed with the fact that this is one of the heaviest and fastest songs on the already fast and heavy album that this is. The screams are pure chaos, too, that I already mentioned. It's just so piercing and banshee-like. The chainsaw revving into breakdown section is also one of my favorite moments on the entire album. It's so fucking brutal. Again, mosh pit visual coming off of this track, but this time just everybody's murdering each other. Tekimuyo? I don't know, man. I'm bad at this. This track has such a fun chorus and vibe to it. It's probably the most upbeat and probably the most hyper pop vibes for the entire runtime here. The instrumental is more quirky and bouncy than some of the others as well. It gives me strong guppy vibes, but like demonic guppy. This isn't personally one that I end up walking away with as a favorite, but it is really fun while it's on. It's just not that memorable in comparison. Track 7, I Need It, has a refrain that is just the title of the song repeated over and over. I need it, I need it, I need it, like that, but in a deep pitch filter. And it is one of the gloomiest, most like dark sounding moments on the entire album. If that isn't panic inducing enough for you, then the looped shout vocals in the background of the beat throughout the entire track certainly will be. The moment in which the song gets all distorted and staticky is simply better heard than described as well. It's pretty indescribable. Nightmarish in a way. Leading into Nightmare, a relatively short interlude track of sorts, certainly fits the name. It's one of the noisiest and most chaotic sounding tracks rather, I suppose. It's not really a full song, but it is just full noise, and it has one vocal line. It is a line in Russian, and it's accompanied by the screams of the damned and a broken television. Truly, truly fitting of its name, and a wonderful interlude to lead into track 10, BNE, the most disturbing song on the album pretty easily. The heaviness, the deep voice vocal effect, the lyricism overall, it's all very freakish. The knocking on the window sound, especially in particular, that is mixed in a way where it sounds very real if you have headphones on, has me just grabbing for weapons. I feel like I've talked pretty extensively on this song already throughout this entire video, but that is really because it is one of the best, if not the best, on the whole album, which is saying quite a bit just because of how much respect I have for this whole thing. So instead of describing the song any more to you, I'll go ahead and just say go check out the music video because it's also incredible. Track number 10 is Peaking. Maybe this is entirely a stretch, but between the psychedelic sounding synths, the reverb on everything, and the ad-libs, I feel like I'm detecting a little bit of Travis Scott influence, or at least somewhat of a psychedelic trap influence overall. Maybe it's more ASAP Rocky or something along those lines. Either way, it's a switch up that I greatly commend them for, and I like that there's something pulling us out of the heaviness and darkness of BNE into a much more uplifting and floaty type of vibe. It's great that they tried a lot of different ideas on this project and decided to close off the album on something a little bit more peaceful. And that leads us into our actual closer, that one being Any Man, and this one has an interpolation of 50 Cent's Many Men. It is the most liberties taken with any of the interpolations, however. It's shouted, possibly even screamed, and seems very different than how the original song comes off, although still being recognizable. And I think it's my favorite interpolation on the project, filled with many interpolations already. This one also has that psychedelic trap edge to it that the previous one does, although I would say it's executed even better here. Really, this front to back, this song just has a certain vibe from it you can't really get anywhere else. I've already said how much I like the verse on this song. It's pretty much flawless, but it's also the most abrasive part of the song, so it very nicely juxtaposes the floaty and bright vibe of the rest of it. They would have easily made a good enough statement by walking in, giving us the harshest shit ever, and then walking back out, just executing the point and not doing much else. But I really appreciate that they went above and beyond. My least favorite thing about this album is that I didn't think to make it, but I am damn glad that somebody else decided to make it. Not only is this an act to keep an eye out for, I would say they're my favorite thing happening in experimental music, especially experimental hip-hop right now, which says quite a bit, as it's one of my favorite genres. You could easily pick apart something like this for having aesthetics that are a little bit cringy or too online, again, to reiterate that, but fuck it, I like it a lot. I didn't want to touch grass anyway. For people looking for the extremities of music, that's the furthest you can push things, we've found it's right here. I mean, like I said, this is one step away from the harsh noise genre while still being pretty danceable and catchy. So it's impressive in that way. It's something that I would actually come back to, whereas all harsh noise is essentially not necessarily a novelty to me, but not something that I would actually actively want to listen to. So we're here. As far as actual music goes that is not harsh noise, this is pretty much as harsh as it gets. For people who are newcomers or not accustomed at all to experimental hip-hop, industrial music, power noise, anything like that, yeah, this is probably not the best hopping on point. However, if you want to dramatically broaden your tastes, this is the way to do it, because if you can get used to this, you can get used to anything. It makes the rest of the genres it's mostly associated with look like Little League Baseball. Regardless, I genuinely greatly appreciate Payne for coming through and giving me the craziest shit that's ever landed on my ears. And I greatly encourage people who are into this sort of music to go ahead and give it a listen. You might be into the novelty of it even if you aren't necessarily a fan of these noisier genres. I am still working on this segment. I am starting it off still. We haven't really gotten to a point where I am absolutely sure how this structure will go. So if you have suggestions, go ahead and leave them for me down in the comment section below. I would greatly appreciate feedback as well as some suggestions for albums you would like me to cover in the future. If there is something, especially something more underground, underappreciated, or undiscovered that really strikes you as interesting, I would love to hear about it. And if it strikes me the same way, it'll probably end up in a video. So you have a nice day and listen to some sweet, sweet music.